Hey everybody, this is Mitch from BoardCo, and today I'm going to break down high-end skim style Wakesurf boards and what you can look for if you are shopping for one of these boards online. All right everybody, I'm going to break down a few of the different things that you can look at when you are shopping for a skim style Wakesurf board, and particularly if you're shopping for that online. Now, when you're shopping online, most of the time, all you see is the top of the board, the bottom of the board, and an outline of the perimeter of the board. There's a whole bunch of them, and so how do you differentiate which one you want to get? Well, you could go in and read every single description that we have on each one of those boards on boardco.com, or I can probably give you a few tips that might make it so you can eliminate a few of the boards out of the mix just real quick right off the bat. So I wanted to talk about a few different things that you can see just by looking at the pictures of the boards online and really get an idea of how that board is going to perform and how it's going to ride based on just those characteristics. Now, there's a lot of different things to consider with a Wakesurf board outside of just the perimeter outline or the shape of the board. There's things such as the rocker line, there's the total volume or how thick the board is, there's the material that the board is made out of. There's a lot of different factors like that. But the perimeter and shape of the board is probably the most important factor between picking different boards, and it's certainly one of the major factors that you want to consider when you're getting one. And it's also something you can really quickly probably eliminate a board or two out of the mix of what you may be shopping for. Now, in front of me here, I've got three different boards, and the reason why I picked these three is not because they're necessarily the ideal board for you, but because they really allow me to showcase the different areas that we're going to be talking about really clearly today because they're different from one another. So right here I have a Phase 5 Diamond, I have a Phase 5 Trident, and I have a Hyperlite Hi-Fi. Now, the thing I wanted to point out with these different boards is the different shaping that they have, the different ways that the boards are going to ride. Now, the most important factor when you're looking at the perimeter outline of a board is going to be the tail shape. And the reason why is because the tail shape is the part of the board that is always going to be sitting in the water. It's also going to be the part of the board that has the biggest impact on the way that water flows across the back end of the board and out the back, which is going to direct and control how the board is going to ride and feel when it's on the wave. All right, so breaking down the tail shapes, the first board I'm going to talk about is the Trident. Now, the Trident has a really unique tail shape that's going to let me talk about a lot of different things here. So it's a wider tail that's got kind of a bat wing tail shape. It's also got multiple fins on the tail, which is kind of unique for a skim style board, and I'm going to talk about that in just one second. So the first one is talking about the tail shape of the board. Now, the reason why you would want a shape like this, that's a bat wing shape, as compared to like a Hi-Fi, which is a true pintail shape, meaning it comes to just one singular straight point down here, is for a number of reasons. The first one is that by having a shape that is more squared off in the tail, it's going to give the board more surface area in the back. And what that surface area is going to do is it's going to give you more volume and it's going to give you more speed, meaning that it's going to have more surface area, lifting the board up and letting it ride higher in the water, making it move faster. Now, this faster isn't necessarily always a good thing, but it is definitely a good thing if you are a bigger rider that needs some more support, whether you're on a smaller wave or if you just are having a hard time keeping up with the wave and want more speed to make sure you stay in the pocket. Having this wider tail profile is really going to help with that quite a bit. So that's piece number one, is it's got a wider tail. The way you can judge how wide a tail is just basically draw a box around it. Like if the edge rail right here just continued straight up and you formed a 90-degree angle, like a square, and look at how much surface area is filled in. If it's a pintail shape that cuts in right across here, it's way less than if it's something that is a boxed out shape that's all the way boxed. Now, this one isn't obviously a true 90-degree box. That would be a weird board to ride, but this board's going to have a lot more volume in the tail than just a straight pintail shape. The other thing that you have is, as opposed to having just a big wide rounded shape here on the tail, it's got this bat tail design, which is going to give it even more speed. It's also going to give it a little more grip when you roll it on the edge because it's going to control the water flow. The last thing to talk about here is that this board has multiple fins. Now, this is larger 2-inch fins from Phase 5, but having the multiple fins gives you the ability to have a board that's going to be a lot more stable. That's one other feature about having a wider perimeter board here. It's going to be more stable than if you're on a pintail shape. It's not going to be as slidey or squirrely. But you have multiple fins here, which is going to give the board a lot of traction. Now, one thing I do want to point out when you have a board that is set up like this with these fins is you don't have to run this board as a 3-fin board. You could run it as a 2-fin board. You could even take it out and go to just a straight single fin board if you wanted to, and one single smaller fin. So it could ride like a true ultra high performance skim style board, but it's going to be one that's got more of a fang or a bat tail shape here in the back, as opposed to something that is a pintail shape like a traditional skim style board. So more surface area, more speed, rides higher in the water, better for bigger guys. However, it's not going to be quite as maneuverable. It's a great board for pulling 360s, especially if you run down and have less fins on it, but it's not going to spin quite as quick and quite as easily as these other boards I'm going to talk about. So that's tail shape number 1. Wider, faster, more stable, and going to be better for bigger guys, rides higher in the water. Next one is the Phase 5 Diamond. Now, this board is a hybrid shape between the Trident and the Hi-Fi that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. Instead of coming to a straight pintail, it has what they call a diamond tail, meaning that it's a little bit boxed out, but it's not a bat tail or a fang tail or something like that. It's a rounded out, kind of boxy diamond shaped tail. This is going to allow the board to have more surface area in the back, but it's going to also be able to spin and maneuver. It's kind of a nice in the middle board. Once again, it's got 3 fins here at the rear, but if you turn to the side and really look here, you can see that the fins are not very deep. They're only an inch deep as far as how deep they sit in the water. And the 2 side ones are really short, meaning that they're going to just give you a tiny bit of extra grip and traction. This board is going to spin much easier with this fin configuration than the Trident did. It's also important to note that you can change these fins out. You can go to those big 2-inch fins like we have on the Trident, or you can put the same fin combination on a Trident. So don't worry about the number of fins on the board when you're talking about a skim style board for the most part, because you can change that. So it just gives you a little more ability to customize your ride if you wanted to. Now, so that's the bottom of the Diamond. Lastly, going to the bottom of the Hi-Fi. This is a true pintail shape, which means it comes to just a straight point here at the back of the board. It's less surface area and less volume than the Diamond, and certainly less than the Trident. But it gives you by having this edge rail that tucks in a lot more, it's going to slide and maneuver and spin easier. So if you want to come up and slash on the top of the wave, if you wanted to spin 360s or 720s, this board is going to spin a little easier than either of the 2 boards I just mentioned. That doesn't mean that the Diamond can't spin. It actually is a phenomenal board for spinning, but the Hi-Fi is going to spin just a little bit easier. That being said, it also doesn't have quite as much volume. So if you're a bigger guy riding on a smaller wave, you may need to have a little more volume like you have in a Diamond, or especially a Trident, if you want to keep up with the wave. So that's talking about tail profile configurations that you can see on images online. The next part that I'm going to talk about is the nose, which is really just a continuation of the tail shape. What you're wanting to look at here, the same way that we're looking at the way that the edge line continued off the side of the board and how it carries to the tail, the same type of thing applies when you go to the nose of the board. You see these other 2 boards I've got, they're both pin nose type shape, but I want to talk about the Trident here because it's got a little bit of a squared off feature. It's not a big boxed out square. For a skim style board, that would also be unusual, but it's got a little bit more of a boxed out front than a traditional pin nose like you see right here on the Diamond. Now what this is going to do is add a little more surface area in the front of the board, which means when you lean on your front foot, it's going to have more surface area up there to support you and give you speed. So once again, just like more volume and more surface area in the tail makes the board faster, more volume and more surface area in the nose of the board makes it faster as well. The more overall surface area and overall volume a board has, the faster it is going to be, and that is one of the best ways to get it without increasing the thickness of the board is by adding it in the nose. So you have those 3 different, you have that kind of an idea when we start breaking down the perimeter outline of the board. Now, there's one other board I wanted to point out, and the main reason why is because it's actually our top selling skim style board, and it's very unique in talking about these, but based on the principles that we just discussed, we probably can have a pretty good idea of how this board rides. This right here is the Phase 5 Hammerhead, Drewden Yellow's Pro Model board. And based on what we talked about with the rest of the three, you can probably identify how this board is going to ride right off the bat before you ever jump on it. It's got a little bit wider tail shape. It's not a full bat tail, but it's a little bit more boxed out even than the diamond tail on the Phase 5 Diamond is. So it's going to be a little bit faster. Also, same type of thing on the nose of the board. It's got a little bit more of a boxed out nose, which means it's going to have more volume on the front when you lean on your front foot. One of the main things I want to point out is on this board, part of the reason why they gave it a box shape is so if you're riding the board revert, meaning that if you've got the fin in the front and you've got the back here, that extra squared off shape in the back is going to give you, on the nose of the board, is going to give you stability when you're riding in a revert position. So if the fin's out here in front of you while you're riding along the wave, it's going to give you more traction and it's going to feel less squirrely by having that boxed out nose. Now, the one thing I didn't talk about, but that you can get a little bit of an idea of, is looking at the side profile of this board. This board has a little bit of a peanut shape, meaning that the rail comes up here and then it actually dips in towards the middle of the board. Now, the reason they did this is exactly what you might think when we're talking about the nose and the tail, which is the more surface area that you have, the more volume that you have, the faster the board is going to be. Now, rather than making it super wide through the center, which would make the board really wobbly and not ride very well and not have great control, they decided to take out a section through the middle right here, and that makes it so that this board can be ridden a little bit shorter, and it's going to have tons of speed right underneath where your feet are. So it's kind of a unique design that gives you a combination of really good grip as well as the ability to be really fast and really maneuverable, but it's not going to be necessarily quite as easy to spin as something like a true pintail shape like a Hi-Fi is. So I hope this has been helpful in giving you some great things to look at when you're looking at boards. Just like I said, it gets down to the total surface area, the total volume that the board has, and a continuation of this rail shape. If you follow the rail, look at how it moves, look at how it bends, that's how the water is going to flow when you're riding the board. And generally speaking, when you look at that, you can have a good idea of how the board is going to maneuver and how it's going to ride when it's on the water. So hopefully this has been helpful. If you have any questions about boards or about the characteristics of the boards or anything like that, feel free to reach out to our gear guys. Our experts are exactly what I just said, or what we call them. They are experts in their field. They know their boards better than just about anyone. They've ridden everything that we carry. It's one of the requirements that we have to work here, is to ride everything that we sell. So hopefully they can point you in the right direction and give you a good idea of what to expect. Also, don't forget that we have a performance guarantee on everything that we carry. So if you decide to get a diamond and you don't absolutely love it, you're welcome to send it back to us and come back and get a Hammerhead. So we can go through and get you set up with exactly the board you want. We want to make sure you're perfectly happy. So check out BoardCo.com for more information. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if you got any questions. We appreciate it a ton, and we'll see you later.